Hey guys, it's Luke Johnson from Noetic, the philosophy, poetry, and humanities teaching app. Today I'm joined by Holly Holt again, and she's bringing to my attention, our attention, a poem by Edgar Albert Guest called See It Through. And I'm just going to let her run the show. I'm experiencing some technical difficulties on my end, so I will likely not be interjecting as much. I'm just going to let Holly see this lesson through. All right, so Holly, take it away.
All right. The reason that I actually started, up with this poem this week is, last 2 weeks I've been doing Emily Dickinson. So I figured I would change it up just a little bit. Typically Emily Dickinson, it veers more towards, the sadder side of life. So that was one of the reasons I had decided I want to do something positive this week. And the poet that I chose, he is actually who I call the other Edgar. And the reason I say that is because everyone knows who Edgar Allan Poe is, but no one knows who Edgar Albert Guest is. A little bit backstory about who he is. He was born in 1881. He started from the very bottom at a news, actually I think it was the Chicago Tribune, and he worked his way up. And throughout that time, the poems that he would write would be like poems that would help him get through the day. And throughout his life, he actually wrote over 11,000 poems. I didn't know who he was until a few years ago, because my former boss, who's also, my former boss's boss, so he's higher up than my boss, but he gave me a book of poetry. And, he was a three-star general, so I was thinking, okay, this is going to be like really like tomboyish stuff, like gusto and everything else. And I was just like, okay, I'll read it, because I'll read anything. I'm like Mikey that way. So I started reading them. And the way that Edgar Guest actually gets into things is very positive. It's almost a sing-song sort of positive, and that's why since I've actually learned who he is, those who actually come to me and say, who do you recommend that I get into? I don't want any of that wishy-washy stuff, with like the real cryptic. I'm like, okay, I've got somebody for you. So I turn them on to Edgar Guest, and then they come back and they're like, this is good. I was like, see, I told you not all poetry is like wishy-washy, and so this particular poem, I was thinking about it this week because a lot of the students that I worked with, we actually worked on the topic of attitude. And they were like, what's the difference between a good, like a positive attitude and a bad, like a negative attitude, And I was like, well, there's this perfect poem. I can't share it with you right now. But, those who actually are my students, I hope they watch this, and I hope, whoever, watches this will enjoy it. But it's called See It Through. And the poem, it can connect to all parts of your life. It can connect to, like with me, work, going to school, handling everything in life, and if you're really determined, to see it through, if you're determined to even get it started in the first place, you should be determined to see it through. So without further ado, here's the poem. See it through. When you're up against the trouble, meet it squarely face to face. Lift your chin and set your shoulders. Plant your feet and take a brace. When it's vain to try to dodge it, do the best that you can do. You may fail, but you may conquer. See it through. Black may be the clouds about you, and your future may seem grim. But don't let your nerve desert you. Keep yourself in fighting trim. If the worst is bound to happen, in spite of all that you can do, running from it will not save you. See it through. Even hope may seem but futile, when with troubles you're beset, but remember you are facing just what other men have met. You may fail, but fall still fighting. Don't give up, whatever you do. Eyes front, head high to the finish. See it through. So now a lot of people, during this time of year, whenever it starts getting fall, a lot of them are like between two borders of, yay, it's finally fall. And the others are like, sort of like, I'm sort of depressed, because what about the sunlight? And, and I'm like, well, if you carry sunlight in your soul, with poems like this, it's easy, it's easier for you to do. Then you can see fall through, So I mean, like this is one of those poems that you can apply to any aspect of your life. Like if you're having relationship problems, if you see it through because you feel like the person that you're having the relationship problems with is worth it, you see it through, and then you'll come out to the end. And I mean, it's sort of like this line where it says, "But remember, you're facing just what other men have met." So it's nothing new that you're facing. It's just your attitude about the situation, and I'm always thinking about, the time that this guy was alive, 1881 to 1959. So historically, what were we going through during that time? The Great Depression. He actually had a radio show, a very popular radio show from like the 1930s into the 1940s. And of course, what was happening most during that time? War. I mean, we were coming out of the Great Depression, and to have a poem like this, and a poet like this, he was always writing something positive. And that's the reason, I mean, he was so popular during his time. He was actually called, the people's poet, and so many people, I mean, they don't even know who he is these days. But, this is one of those poems that have, been so ingrained in me since I read it that, you know what, no matter what I face, I'm going to get it, And that's always, helped me be determined, no matter what it is. And so, like, like I was saying about my students, some of them, they sort of have like this understanding of what a positive attitude is. I get one, it's sort of like, like how much is that puppy in the window? I can't afford it, but I want it, but, and that's sort of like what happiness is if you're striving for it, you can obtain it, but it's one of my favorite poems. So I would recommend it to anyone.
Fantastic. Thank you. I really appreciate all the historical contextualization. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Just, like any troubles that anyone is facing, read some Edgar Guest and truly see it through.
Excellent. All right. You can now find this on the Noetic app. Thank you, Holly. I really appreciate you teaching us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.